Hi, I'm Nicholson, Head of Testing, and today I'm going to take a look at the new Fujifilm X-A2, the replacement to the Fuji X-A1. Let's start by looking at the new camera's specification. The X-A2 is Fuji's most affordable interchangeable lens camera, and like the X-A1, it has a 16.3 million pixel APS-C format CMOS sensor. It's not an X-trans CMOS sensor like is found in other Fuji X-series compact system cameras, so it has the standard Bayer pattern filter array and an anti-aliasing filter. There's also the same EXR Processor 2 engine as is found in the X-A1, and this enables a maximum continuous shooting rate of 5.6 frames per second and a native sensitivity range of ISO 200 to 6400. There are JPEG-only expansion settings of ISO 100, 12800 and 25600. As before, there's no viewfinder built in, but the range of tilting movement of the 3-inch 920,000 dot screen has been expanded to make it easier to compose selfies. When the screen is flipped up to shoot a selfie, face detection and eye detection AF modes kick in automatically, so you don't need to fiddle about changing focusing mode or selecting AF points. Other new additions to the focusing system include Auto Macro AF and multi-target modes, which are designed to make it easier for inexperienced photographers to get subjects sharp. The camera automatically switches to Auto Macro AF when close subjects are detected, and in multi-target mode, the camera uses multi-AF points to identify and focus on the subject. Fuji sells the X-A2 with the new XC 16-50 f3.5 to 5.6 OIS-2 lens, which has a closest focusing distance of 15 cm from the sensor at its widest point. This means that it can focus on objects that are approximately 7 cm from the front element at the shortest focal length. That's pretty useful, especially as you don't have to switch the camera into macro mode. In line with other recent Fuji introductions and firmware upgrades, the X-A2 has the new classic chrome film simulation mode in addition to the previous collection of options which tailor the look of JPEG images. These modes can be used when shooting RAW files at the same time as JPEGs, so you can have a clean file for processing as well as a JPEG with the effect applied. There's also a collection of advanced filters: toy camera, miniature, pop colour, high key, low key, dynamic tone, soft focus and several partial colour options. When these modes are selected, the camera only records JPEG files, even if RAW file recording has previously been set. Now let's take a look at the camera and its controls. Anyone who has an X-A1 will immediately spot that the X-A2 uses the same body shell and the control layout hasn't changed apart from the replacement of the now redundant macro button with a shortcut to the self-timer options. The X-A2 has a metal body that feels more solid than some other entry-level cameras. Up here there's a mode dial with options to select the usual manual, shutter priority, aperture priority and program modes, as well as a custom option that can be set to the photographer's preferences. There's also a clutch of automatic modes, including a scene recognition mode, a route to the advanced filters, and a multiple exposure mode, and a few scene-specific modes. There's no lock on the dial, but I found it usually stays in place and isn't easily knocked out of position as the camera is pulled out of a bag. This metal dial over here is used for adjusting exposure compensation in the semi-automatic exposure modes, or scrolling through menu options or images in review mode. This is a little easier to knock out of position, so it's a good idea to check that the exposure compensation hasn't changed between shots. This plastic sub-command dial lacks the quality feel of the other two top plate dials, but helpfully it can be depressed in review mode to zoom into the AF point to check focus. I find it a little hard to identify the buttons on the back of the camera with my thumb, but as the X-A2 doesn't have a viewfinder, there are a few occasions when you're likely to have to find a control by feel alone. Pressing the Q button activates the quick menu, which displays up to 16 features for adjustment. As you can see, it's quick and easy to use as you just navigate to the option you want, then use one of the dials to scroll through the options. You don't have to use the OK button to select or confirm anything, which is nice. It would be even better if it could be customised though. A customisable screen in the main menu wouldn't go amiss either. I found that the 3-inch 921,000 dot screen is capable of showing lots of detail, but its sunlight mode needs activating in bright conditions. This makes it possible to compose images in very bright conditions, but you need to keep an eye on the histogram as images look very bright and it's tempting to reduce the exposure unnecessarily. Although it's pretty easy to connect the X-A2 to a smartphone via its Wi-Fi system, I had several failed attempts at connecting it to a computer to transfer images wirelessly via the included PC autosave software. In the end, I decided life's too short and transferred the images the traditional way, by inserting an SD card into the computer's card slot. It's a shame that it's not possible to control the camera remotely via a smartphone connection, but I guess there have to be a few compromises made to keep costs down. So what are the images like? Firstly, although the kit lens feels lightweight and plasticky, it has decent glass inside and it's capable of capturing sharp detail. There's little sign of noise in JPEG files throughout the X-A2's native sensitivity range, but there's some speckling visible at 100% in RAW files captured at ISO 400 and above. As it's fine-grained and evenly distributed, it's possible to find a nice balance between noise and detail visibility when processing files. Images captured at ISO 6400 look good at A3 size. Our lab tests indicate that the X-A2's JPEGs don't have especially impressive dynamic range. This is something we've noticed with other Fuji cameras, and it's a consequence of the fairly high mid-tone contrast that they have. This contrast makes JPEGs look bright and sharp. It gives them their distinctive Fuji look that many users love. The RAW files look quite a bit flatter by comparison, but they have much higher dynamic range. This means that they offer good scope for tonal adjustment post-capture, and greater detail can be drawn out of the shadows and highlights if necessary. On the whole, the X-A2's automatic white balance system does a good job. It generally captures the feel of a scene without a strong colour cast. However, a few of my shots taken in a mixture of bright sun and shadow look a bit cooler than I would like. I like the slightly muted warm tones that Fuji cameras produce when the new classic chrome film simulation mode is selected, and it was my favourite choice when shooting with the X-A2. The standard or default option, Provia, is a good general purpose setting that delivers pleasant colours with a nice level of saturation. Switching to Velvia gives a boost in saturation and contrast. It's unlikely that any dedicated sports photographers will be happy with the X-A2's autofocus system, as it's not great with moving subjects. But it gets most still subjects sharp quickly. It even copes quite well with low light levels, only becoming indecisive in very low light. I found that when the screen is flipped up to shoot selfies, the face detection AF system usually spots any faces in the scene, and the eye detection AF latches onto an eye pretty well, provided that you're not wearing spectacles. Similarly, in multi-target mode, the camera does a reasonable job of identifying suitable areas for focus, but they're not always in the same plane, and you don't actually know the point of focus until you review the image. In summary, provided you're happy to forgo a viewfinder, the Fuji X-A2 is a good entry-level camera, but there are times when you need to shoot RAW files to get good results.